The big question today is, should you set boundaries, or is that being too difficult and rigid? Today, I'm going to be talking about setting boundaries and why it's often a challenge for a lot of people. My name is Joan and Nwosu, and welcome to the Second Chances podcast, a love journey in black and white. Boundaries. I didn't even know what they were about up until a few years ago. But there's something that I really have always struggled with. And I wasn't really sure why until I started to do some inner work to figure out why I was never able to first set boundaries and then secondly, communicate these boundaries to my partners. For many women, especially women who've been through tough relationships or just a difficult childhood, setting boundaries can feel like you're stepping into unfamiliar territory, right? So it's very, very, very difficult for you, very challenging. And then there's this fear. There's fear of you ending up alone, or fear of you not being heard, or worse, the fear of you being perceived as demanding or unyielding. Well, I wasn't perceived, I was told I was being demanding, and so I had no boundaries. But that happens to a lot of us, right? But let's rewind a little bit. When we talk about boundaries, what do they mean? Like, simply put, these are just lines that you draw around yourself to protect your well-being, your mental health, and to define what is acceptable to you as an individual and what isn't. It defines how you want other people to treat you. Because if you don't define it, then you really can't blame them for treating you in a particular way because you didn't say anything. So I know that as we get older, especially when you're single and you're going through the phase where there's a lot of societal pressure, a lot of family pressure on you to get married, to settle down, or to prove that you're okay, everyone's concerned about you, you might start to feel the need or lack of the need to set boundaries. So now you're at the point where you're like, okay, maybe anything goes. Maybe I should just accept people as they are. Maybe it's okay for people to treat me a certain way just so that I can meet up with these societal pressures and not be single, because people who set boundaries seem to push people away. And I really don't know where we got that from, but that's what a lot of us think. So here's the thing. Setting boundaries is not about pushing anyone away. It's about you honoring yourself. Like I talk about self-worth, self-love, valuing yourself. It's so key. You need to be able to honor yourself, honor what is important to you and stand by it, right? It's about standing firm and true to your values, to your authentic self, and not just going along with anything and everything because you want to be seen as more accepting and tolerant. No, you should stick with whatever feels right for you. If it doesn't feel right, then just say no. Okay? You should be respecting your own needs, even though you respect other people's needs as well. But the same way you respect their own boundaries and their needs and their values, they should be respecting yours as well. And you should always bring it up if those lines are being crossed. So for women who maybe you're starting over, or like I said, you're older and you're single, this is the time where you need to start identifying what those boundaries are. It's always better to identify your boundaries before you get into a relationship than get into a relationship and when you're being treated poorly, that's when you start bringing it up and saying, you made me feel this way, or yada, yada, yada. No, you should set your boundaries before. You should know what they are and be able to communicate them. And talking about communication, I know that a lot of people think that for you to communicate your boundaries, it has to be confrontational. It doesn't have to be, right? It doesn't have to be about, okay, this is me, you do you. It doesn't have to be about that. It could just be having a very, very frank conversation about, these are the things that are important to me. This is what are acceptable to me. This is what I will tolerate, or this is what I wouldn't tolerate, and things like that. And it doesn't have to be in a loud voice. It's just you communicating your own values, your own boundaries, so that the other person is aware. Don't wait till there's a fight to want to communicate the boundaries. So when you're communicating boundaries, make sure you focus on I. So I like when XYZ, or I don't appreciate XYZ, or I feel this way when something happens. Not when it's a fight. It's not, oh, you made me feel like I'm stupid, or you always do this, or you never do that. That's not a good time to try to communicate your boundaries. So make sure that you're very clear on what your boundaries are, and then you also know when and how to communicate it so that it is clear, because you need the clarity. You need to make sure that they understand what you're saying, and then you're also saying it in a very calm voice. So it's not a fight, right? So it's all about your self-worth. It's all about your preservation of self. You have to be able to hold on to these things so that you don't lose yourself in a relationship. I know that the trauma of previous relationships, especially if you came from a relationship or a marriage where your boundaries were constantly crossed, if you're like me, you didn't even have any boundaries, then it becomes really, really difficult. But you need to start unlearning and healing from those past relationships and holding on to your self-worth so that you have the courage to now set the boundaries prior to getting into a new relationship. It's great when you know how your partner wants to be treated, and they also know and respect how you want to be treated. What are the things that are acceptable? What are the things that you want out of this relationship? It's so fantastic, because that's the blueprint to your relationship. So everyone is clear on what works or what doesn't work. So if you've been on the wall about setting boundaries, or if you're like me in my previous relationships where I had none, then setting boundaries are okay. They're not just okay, they're actually quite necessary. It is so powerful to the future of your relationship, to having a healthy relationship. You have no idea. So don't shy away from setting boundaries. It's you saying to yourself, I value myself. I know who I am, right? I know what I want. There's nothing more beautiful than that, at least to me anyway. So start setting boundaries. Start identifying what your boundaries are. What are some of the things that you really, that are very, very important to you? What does it look like? And if you're in a relationship or you're just starting to get into a relationship, find out ways how you can communicate these boundaries even better so that it lands the right way without being confrontational. Okay, well, that's all I have for you today. And if you want to check out some of the work that I do as a dating coach, I do teach boundaries as well. But I have a lot of resources on my website, Nwosu.com. I also have my free book, The Second Chances at Love, a free ebook that you can download so that you can master the whole dating process. I talk about everything that you need to know from when you decide you're ready to date, and all the 5 important steps that you have to go through to not only attract your soulmate, but to ensure that you're able to attract, keep, and marry, if that's what you desire, your soulmate. Well, thank you so much for listening to today's episode on the Second Chances podcast, a love journey in black and white. Until next time, sending you love and light.